Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. Tonight is our first Q&A panel discussion for our virtual restoration fair. This is the second year that Historic Albany has done a restoration fair to try and help get some information out there about how to rehab some of the great historic buildings that are in Albany. And we are partnering with the Land Bank to do this. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we're doing it virtually, but that's allowing us to do a whole bunch of other types of programs that we probably wouldn't be able to do if it was in person. And instead of just doing one day of a lot of programming, we're doing an entire summer's worth of programming. So hopefully this will help a little bit more than just one day. Before we get started with everything, I just want to thank our sponsor for the evening. Aurora Insurance is a sponsor for the entire restoration fair, which is going the whole summer. So thank you very much to all of you. And the New York State Council on the Arts has always been a strong supporter of Historic Albany and all of our programs. So thank you for your constant support. All right, tonight we have joining us Fran Stern from the New York State Historic Preservation Office. Fran is one of the reviewers for the homeowner tax credits. So Fran, you've already seen her. She's done a video about tax credits, a little bit about the process there. We have Erica Gans from the Albany County Land Bank, so she'll be answering a lot of your questions. Erica is the woman behind the camera for a lot of the videos and photos and everything that we're posting. So Erica's really the woman that knows the most about most of these buildings. And then we have Chris Hacker of Albany Artisans, who's our kind of resident expert contractor. Tonight, Chris is also an HRC commissioner, so he knows a bit more about the rules and regs, but he's also, in his day job, a preservation contractor who has restored numerous buildings. And Chris has got to be over, what, 15 by now?
Yes.
There's quite a few. So how we're going to do this evening is when you have a question, I'm going to ask you just to raise your hand. If you see, everyone that's familiar with this, just use the raise your hand button. I do know there's a Q&A section on here. I'll try and read those off, but if you'd like, just raise your hand. We'll click on you, unmute you. You can ask your question, and then our expert will answer your question. So I will open that up. If anyone wants to raise their hand for questions, I can start with those. Okay. I saw one and then it went away. Okay, here we go. Okay, Manuel. Okay. Oh. Let's unmute you. Okay. Oh. There we go. Now you are unmuted. Okay, what's your question?
Hey, good evening. My question is about, I'm active duty military, but I'm from Albany, New York. As of right now, I'm not stationed in Albany. Can I take advantage of this program?
Which program specifically?
Just the Albany County Land Bank, and I would like to buy a property potentially for like a rental property for the future.
Absolutely, Manuel. We would be interested in speaking with you. I'll give you a brief overview of who we are and what we do. We acquire vacant, abandoned parcels in and around Albany County through tax foreclosure. After they've been foreclosed by Albany County, they are transferred to the Albany County Land Bank. We seek buyers who have the ability to purchase and rehabilitate these properties. Most of our properties do need a significant amount of work. But we are open to working with anybody. You know, when it comes down to what your personal situation is, I would be happy to schedule a time to see what that looks like when you are in the area, when you can have an opportunity to look at some properties and we can see what you're looking at in terms of a rehab. But yes, you can.
Okay. As far as setting something up with you, how would that work? Do I just email the Albany County Land Bank email?
Yep. If you do info@albanycountylandbank.org, you'll get right to me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I do also have all the panelists' email that we'll have at the end. So if you're looking to contact us, I know some of us, especially Historic Albany staff, a lot of us are working from home. So email is the best way to get a hold of us. So at the end, we will post emails for how to contact everyone as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, what other questions do we have this evening? I don't see any other hands raised. Does anyone want to be the brave second? Okay, if not, we do have some questions that people had sent in. I figured we would start with everyone who's here. One of the questions that was sent in was a question about brownstone repair. They have a set of brownstone steps and a brownstone facade that has several layers of patching. A lot of it seems to be failing, and they want to know, are there any guidelines for how to do it? And that's a really big question. We actually were talking about it beforehand, and I think we all kind of decided that you really need to talk to an expert mason. Brownstone is a very difficult DIY project. Even if you're pretty handy and you've done a good bit of it before, brownstone is not a forgiving material. I would certainly recommend talking to a couple masons to look at it. They also sent some photos with their question, and it looks like some of the patches appear to be holding. Parging is typically how brownstone steps are repaired. When you have the kind of layers that are coming off, they take off the layers that aren't holding together, and then they'll put on what's called a layer of parging, which is basically a tinted mortar that goes on, and that's not really a great fix, but unfortunately it's one of the only options available to brownstone. It's very difficult to kind of consolidate that. So that's one of the ways that people do it, but especially in this climate, as soon as winter comes, you're gonna get water underneath that and it's gonna pop off. So you'd have to be very careful. And then removing all of the patching is exceptionally difficult. And I think the initial word of the wise would be more, don't use any power tools to try and remove the bad patches, because you can really end up gouging your very soft brownstone and doing more harm than good. There are some resources that are out there through both the National Park Service. So I will post a couple links for brownstone repair on the Facebook page for the restoration group, just so we're not looking for it online now. But yeah, we'll post some links about brownstone repair. Okay, any other questions from our audience tonight? I don't see any hands raised. You guys are a quiet bunch tonight. No brave souls? Okay, we'll go back to our questions that were sent in. Someone asked what the asking price for 144 4th Ave is.
The property is currently listed for $5,000. We encourage all applicants to make an offer. Explain to us, what you're planning to do to the property, and show us why you're offering what it is you're offering. Remember that the Albany County Land Bank is looking for buyers who have the ability to purchase the property, and they're also going to look to see that you have the ability to close and pay those closing costs. As with any transaction, when you buy a property or you buy a vehicle, there's going to be additional costs, and you want to factor that in. So closing costs, we estimate, are somewhere around $1,200 to $1,800. Some of those fees include the recording costs. Some of them include your title search and attorney fees. So we could sit down as well, one-on-one with people as they get to the specific property that they're interested in, and help them determine exactly what their closing costs will be prior to them making an offer.
If they're able to purchase 144 4th, are there any benchmarks and specific timeframes they have to meet that relate to the plan they submitted to you, or do you have independent benchmarks?
We don't have any independent benchmarks per se. We do assign what's called an enforcement mortgage to the sale of our buildings. And what that is it's a lien on the property that does not come with any financing. And what that allows the land bank to do is hold the buyer to the rehab, to the plan that they present to us. So in your application, you will submit a plan, an outline of how long you think it's going to take to get the project up and running. We do checkouts with you to see that you're moving along, and as we've quickly realized, life happens. So if you can work with whoever's assigned to your specific enforcement mortgage, make them aware of the hangups and the holdups that you're running into, we'll work with you on a case-by-case basis to work through extensions to get you to that point.
Thank you. Someone asked, do you guys know how much it would cost to totally rehab the building?
So in that scope of work, there is a number there. And that is our estimate on what we think someone is likely going to spend to rehabilitate that property. We always encourage our buyers to use a 10 to 20% contingency balance. We want to see that you have access to funds for when things like COVID happen. We do have a lot of buyers who try to do these rehabs from outside of Albany County. There can be a hurdle, and it can become more expensive to do that. So you really want to sit down with one of us when you're submitting your application and take a look at what those costs are going to look like. We also encourage, especially now that we have virtual tours on our website, send those to everybody you know who does construction, any contractor you know, or anyone who does work. Have them take a look at the property and help you determine your scope of work.
Another question that someone had asked was, are there any restrictions put on the building by the land bank? I know you just talked about some of the benchmarks for their plan, but are there any other restrictions that would be on the building?
The enforcement mortgage does make it difficult to obtain financing right off the bat through a private bank, but the building itself also makes it difficult to obtain that financing. Again, we can sit down and one-on-one based on the building, determine what that looks like for you. And there are opportunities for the Albany County Land Bank to subordinate your enforcement mortgage, allowing you to free up the opportunity to gain some financing there. I'm sorry, Kara, can you repeat the question?
No, it was about other restrictions that were put on
the restrictions. So the enforcement mortgage would be the main restriction when you're talking about financing. One of the other things the land bank does, we are a nonprofit. So when we do something like a clean out to our building, which 144 4th Ave desperately needed, we use grant funds to pay for that. That does restrict the building. And what that means is that it will need to be rented for the 10 years that the first 10 years that it's operated as a rental. If it's operated as a rental, it will need to be rented to applicants who are at or below 100% of the area media income. That number is pretty high. And again, we can pull those numbers for individuals based on what your plan looks like. Now, again, that would be if you operate it as a rental. If you own or occupy the property, the buyer is going to need to fall under a set of restrictions as well, dependent on what their situation looks like.
Okay. And then just to kind of touch base on the financing, I know it sounds a little scary. We're actually going to be doing another webinar as a part of our restoration fair on Tuesday at 5:30, and the financing is the part that we're looking at. So Fran's going to be rejoining us to talk about more about tax credits and how that works. But we also are going to have Paul Hurley from M&T Bank, who's going to be talking about some of the programs that they offer both for homeowners and for income properties. And then we do have someone from Community Preservation Corporation who is going to be talking about some of their programs. They're a for-profit company that used to do a good bit of financing for development work in Albany a number of years ago, and they're getting back into the game. So that will be Tuesday. Okay, one question someone asked is, this is a Red X building. What specifically does that mean? Oh, one of my favorite questions is the Red X question. So the Red X, they're put on vacant buildings as a part of the New York State Fire Code, actually. It's done by the fire department, totally under code through the fire department, and it's supposed to be a warning for first responders. So there's actually a series of placards. There's a totally red box with a white outline, which just means that it's vacant and there's no known issues within the building. There's a red square with a white slash on it, and that means that there may be some hazards in it. Most likely there's trash, debris, but nothing structural, no major pitfalls. Just kind of be careful as you're going in. And the X actually means that there are known issues. There's either a hole in the floor, there is an issue with the foundation, there's some issue that's a known major problem, and it's basically enter with extreme caution. So it doesn't mean that it's on a demo list or anything like that. It just means for first responders, in the event of an emergency, fire, any kind of medical emergency, enter with extreme caution is what that means. Another question here, as regards to vacant lots, is there a requirement that the lot be developed, and is the lot purchase limited to nearby property owners?
No, it's not necessarily that you have to develop the lot. In fact, a lot of the lots that we have cannot be developed. So we encourage you to contact the municipality where the property is located and have a conversation with them about what can be done with that lot. We are going to hold you to whatever you propose. So if you propose parking on a lot that the city will not allow you to park on, unfortunately, the board will likely not approve that application. If you propose to build a garden, the board will likely approve that application provided everything else is in place. But again, when you're coming to the land bank and you're submitting an application, we encourage you to spend some time with our staff doing application support. And we can help explain for your case what this looks like for your lot, for the municipality it's in, what the building and codes might be looking for. So yeah.
One thing I want to point out too is whether you're building a totally new building on a vacant lot, or if you're looking at even a parking lot or a garden of any structure, we're in a local historic district in Albany, like 144 4th Ave is, and a lot of the properties, actually the color properties that we're focusing on for the rehab fair are. That means that anything done to the exterior of any existing building, but also anything done on the lot, is under the purview of the Historic Resources Commission, and that they have very strict guidelines about parking in historic districts. It's very heavily frowned upon for major thoroughfares, and the screening is very carefully structured. So if you are looking to take a vacant lot and not construct on it, just be careful. If it is in a historic district, just know you will need additional permitting, even for developing the lot. Landscaping is different. Fences, or especially screening for parking lots, falls under that caveat. So just something else to think about. Okay, the next question says, when are applications due and how long does it take to get a decision? Is there communication as you make the decision on who will ultimately get the property? I can split that up if that's a lot in one.
Yeah. Okay. So first part of the question.
It says, when are the applications due?
Okay. So we operate in sales cycle. Every month we issue a list of properties that are moving forward. And those are the ones that if we receive applications on, we know the board will be reviewing, and you will get an answer if your property is on that list. We notify the approved buyers by phone call. We do notify our rejected applicants by email, because we get far more applications than we have properties necessarily to award in each cycle. We do encourage you, and we say so in the email, that if you are rejected, that you contact us and find out exactly why. If you are disqualified, meaning that you have code violations or you have open tax bills, we will reach out to you prior to presenting your application to the board in an effort to allow you to clear that up. Sometimes we understand that a bill might slip through, and we don't want that to fall against someone who has a really great plan for the property. So again, sit down, talk with us, see what the plan looks like. If the property is not on the list, so for example, we'll use the June list. The June list has been live for about a month. Applications will be due the first Tuesday in June on every property that's on that list. We then do a staff review. We present those applications to our acquisition and disposition committee that is made up of several of the board members. And they make a recommendation to the full board. So you can submit an application any time. What that will do is trigger it to be on a list in the next 90 days. So 144 4th Ave, I believe we have signed to our, let me just put it down. We anticipate this property is going to end up on our July list, which will be released on Tuesday when the application deadline for June closes. So stay tuned. You may see that on the July list. And then the application deadline will be the first Tuesday in July, which is July 7th. Then we will start our 2-week review and presentation to the board. You will hear 2 weeks after the application deadline in regards to whether or not you were approved. If you were approved, you will move to contract and closing. That process can take quite some time, especially with COVID. Again, remember, we're dealing with tax foreclosed parcels, and many of our buyers want to get title insurance to protect themselves. The title search can take a bit of time. Right now, it's been a little difficult to access the county vault, which is where all the documents are stored for searchers to do their work. But we will keep in contact with you. You will have a staff member's email address. You will have a staff member's phone number. You can call for updates at any time. I talk to some of my buyers 3 or 4 times a day, and then some other ones, I only speak to them once a month. It's just dependent on what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Erica, is there a set application fee when you apply?
Yeah, so there is a $30 processing fee, and that gives our office the ability to do some of the background checks and credit checks on the property. And then there's what we call an application fee. And that's a bit larger amount. So it can be one of 3 amounts, either $100, $500, or $1,000, depending on what the asking price for the property is, not what you offer. So if you only offer $1, but we're still asking $20,000, we're expecting you to put down that $1,000. If you are not selected for the property, that money is returned to you, that larger set of money, within 15 to 30 days of the board's decision. If you are approved, it will apply to your closing costs. If you are approved but failed to close, that is the only time you'll see the land bank keep that money.
Okay, the next question we have is, if I were interested in a building that I believe will be coming up through the land bank but has not yet, is there any possibility of showing interest or getting a look inside while it's still in the process of coming onto the market with the land bank?
Unfortunately, right now, we are not showing any of our properties. So the only way to get in per se, is to view our virtual tour. If you don't see one of our properties on our website, let us know. We have a lineup for virtual tours that are coming, and we'll let you know when yours is going to be featured. Unfortunately, we do not have access to the properties we don't own yet, as anything can happen at any time. If the previous owner is able to pay off their tax balance, that property could potentially go back to them. So no, we would not allow people inside prior to us owning it. If you know a property is coming to the land bank or you think it is, you can call us and let us know you're interested. You're welcome to submit a letter, but we will not accept applications on properties we do not own.
Someone's asking, are there any volunteer opportunities with the land bank?
Absolutely. Right now it's a little bit difficult because we don't know what direction we're going, but we have lot cleanups all the time and I'm always looking for people to help me. We do have a mailing list. You can join there, or you can send an email to info@albanycountylandbank.org and I can set you up with some opportunities as they become available.
Awesome. All right, the next person asks, I'm interested in rehabbing a home in Albany and having trouble finding banks that will consider lending for a rehab, historic or otherwise. Are you able to recommend some lenders that have worked with HAF or the land bank previously? Oh, that is a very tricky question. Actually, we do know M&T Bank has been doing a little bit and Community Preservation Corporation has. I don't know if they have Community Preservation or CPC. I believe they do more investment properties than with homeowners. But there are very few, unfortunately, out there. M&T is the only one that I know of where people have really been successful with different banks. I know that the Community Loan Fund has some programs. I don't know if they have a homeowner program, though. I know they don't have one for income properties. But at one point, they did have something for homeowners. I'll have to double check that. We'll have answers to a lot of that on Tuesday's webinar all about funding. So we'll get way more in depth, and then Paul Hurley with M&T can talk about a lot of their programs. Does that answer that enough? Are there any additional parts of that question we didn't cover?
I don't have any recommendations. Again, I'm just going to keep repeating myself that you should sit down with someone one-on-one, because maybe for you, the only way to make this make sense is to finance, and we can identify properties that are in our inventory that we think might be eligible for financing, that we think maybe might need a little less work. And we've seen that be successful with buyers in the past.
The next question we have is there a difference between submitting a proposal and doing all of the title inspection, financing, etc.? Clearly one can't develop a full proposal in the 4 to 6 weeks outlined. Can you get a building inspection prior to putting in a proposal?
With the situation we have now, it's difficult because we can't get access to the building. Prior to that, yes, you could bring whoever you wanted in to help you come up with those quotes. We're not holding you to a dollar number or a style of shower or bath. We're looking for a general idea that you have an understanding of what it's going to take to get this property up and running, and that you have access to, again, that contingency budget for when things you pull down a wall and there's more than you expected. But again, let's work together and see what your situation looks like and where we can help you find a property that fits what you're looking for.
What happens, Erica, if they submit a proposal and then potentially, I guess, are they able to get in a little bit more, have some more contractors' numbers come in, do a building inspection, and it comes back that this is really way more than they had anticipated from the virtual tours?
Yeah, so we are developing exactly what that plan will look like, but I imagine it will look something like when we get the applications and we review the applications and make the presentation to the Acquisition and Disposition Committee, I imagine at that time we will schedule a time for those people to access the building with whoever they need to, in accordance, making it safe for everybody. And at that time, I imagine we will send out a form asking people to commit either to continue moving forward or that they would like their fees refunded and they are no longer interested. The last thing we want to do is hand over a building to somebody who is not able to, take it across the finish line. And we want to help you when you run into hurdles to get that property through the finish line. We're committed to putting properties back to productive use. We don't want to have to take them back into our inventory.
Now, I know, Erica, for a lot of the buildings we have for the restoration fair, there are scopes of work, and you have some kind of just general ballpark numbers to give people that idea of how much it costs to rehab these particular buildings. Are there more buildings in the land bank's inventory that have studies of this nature, so that, especially right now when people aren't able to get their contractors and to get those numbers, to kind of help give them a leg up?
Absolutely. And a lot can be done with the square footage of the building, which is important for people to know when you're estimating your costs. You can look at what it would cost for new construction with that amount of square footage that you're currently working with. We think that's a really good number to use. We do have scopes where we can. We have internally just developed a property evaluation report, which is going to be a multi-page document that we're hoping to attach to every building. It is going to start with the buildings that we are trying to focus on first-time home buyers to give them a little bit of a leg up, but we hope that this will be assigned to every property.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is for a very novice person with home repairs. Will a weak scope of work plan be a reason to decline an application, or can they edit it, send it back? Looking at properties or virtual tours can make it difficult to come up with that detailed plan.
Yeah, again, let's talk. When we review your application, you'll get a notification from the land bank. You'll get a letter from the land bank saying, you know, these are the things that we are missing. And if we identify that your scope of work is significantly off, we will let you know we identify this scope of work is significantly off. And at that point is really when we try to get a professional one. So it becomes not your opinion, not our opinion, but what is the professional opinion of what this building needs, to make sure that we're, you know, really guiding this where it needs to go. Again, we're committed to putting the properties back to productive use. So we want, if we have buyers who are coming forward with the enthusiasm to get this done, you know, we really want to have the conversation about how do we make that happen.
Next question I see is, would a buyer most likely be able to get a traditional mortgage for 144? No. Easy, straightforward answer.
No.
But what a buyer could potentially do is get started with what they have access to, or if they apply for grants, or if, you know, there's other funding sources, and get them through to a certain point. And we can talk again about the land bank subordinating their enforcement mortgage and taking the secondary lien holder place to a bank so that you can obtain financing, and getting the property to a more attractive state to where a bank would loan to you.
Okay, Fran, we have a couple tax credit questions. Someone's asking if can they use tax credits if they divide a building, 144th or others, into multifamily, and it's an existing single family home. Is that eligible for tax credits?
I don't know if the rehab costs to actually divide the property would count for tax credits, but essentially we do see tax credit applications all the time where the home might have some kind of income producing component. So every tax credit application will actually ask if the home has an income producing component, because maybe someone has a home office that they claim on their taxes. Maybe they have an Airbnb unit, or it's a duplex and they have one rental unit. So ultimately we'll ask on every single tax credit application if there's an income producing component to the home, because you can use tax credits on those, but the homeowner tax credit can only be used for the space that you directly occupy. So every tax credit application, in order to be complete, you have to spend at least $5,000, and you have to do at least 5% of the work on the exterior of the building. So if you live in a duplex and you occupy 50% of the space in the building and you rent out 50% of it, you can claim tax credits for all of the expenses that you make to rehab your direct living space on the interior. But if you were going to replace the roof, you could only claim a tax credit that's 50% of the total cost of the roof, because the roof covers the whole building, but you only occupy 50% of it. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. The next question that just popped up is, if there's a piece of land not yet owned by the land bank, would they be able to contact a realtor to help them contact the owner and just make an offer directly to the owner, or is that something we don't recommend? Do we have any realtors with experience dealing with rehabs particularly? Are there consequences to acquiring a historic rehab property in this way and not through the land bank? I don't think there's a consequence for acquiring a building that needs to be rehabbed. If it's not acquired through the land bank, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of buildings in Albany that definitely need rehab. And we really don't want every building to have to go through the land bank. I don't think Erica wants them all either. But no, there's definitely no consequence to any of that. We've seen through Historic Albany, especially before the land bank existed, when there was a building that was very critically in need, vacant, or kind of really heading that way, people would try and make either a direct pitch just to the property owner. We found people sending certified letters to their addresses. I'd say most of them were not successful. We did have a number of hardy souls who actually found the owner's personal address and actually went to their house and just knocked on the door and was like, I'm really interested in this building that you own. It's not for sale, but you're not doing anything with it. I'll give you this much money for it. I don't know if that's been highly successful either. I think the certified letters probably your best bet. I don't know of any realtors who would help you contact an owner for a property that's not for sale. I don't know how that would fall in with licensing or anything like that, but I don't know if that's the case. But I don't see a real problem with that.
It's not something we have any recommendation on in terms of realtors that you could work with, but I'm sure there are realtors who do use that mechanism to obtain property. And there's no disadvantage from getting property that's not through the land bank. You know, again, we're committed to putting properties back to productive use. That's our mission. So we want to see these buildings get back up and running. If you get it from the land bank, great. While we hold it, at least it's maintained a little bit. We're securing it. We're keeping an eye on the property and insuring it. But if you're able to obtain a property by other means and rehab it, please go ahead.
Someone's asking, what kind of tax credits are we talking about? Are they state, federal, local? I'll let you take that one, Fran.
We are talking about the New York State Historic Homeownership Tax Credit Program, which is a state program that's run by the New York State Historic Preservation Office. And it's a program that is open to homeowners of historic buildings. So that's the reason why I'm here, is because we're talking specifically about historic buildings. They have to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which many of the land bank properties are. And they also have to fall within a qualifying census tract for these tax credits. So everything in the city of Albany actually qualifies. So the building that we've been looking at this month, 144 4th Avenue, is like a perfect example of a building that you could potentially use tax credits on. And essentially the state program, it's an incentive to help preserve features of the building. So if you're embarking on a big rehab project and you're going to spend at least $5,000 and do at least 5% of that work on the exterior of the building, any expenditures that you make that are approved by the State Historic Preservation Office, you can actually recoup 20% of those expenditures back as a credit towards your state income taxes. So it's a financial incentive for historic preservation.
There's also a matching federal credit, right, Fran, for income producing properties. There's also a state comparable 20% credit, but it has a different threshold and a slightly different review process, but it's also through the State Historic Preservation Office.
Goes through the state, yeah, but the federal programs are also reviewed by the National Park Service. So there's a little bit more review involved, but the homeowner program is, it's New York SHPO's program, so there's only one review, one reviewer. It's pretty easy.
So there are tax credits out there, though, for both homeowners and income producing properties. So if you decide to go that route, there's help there too. Okay, let's go back to our list of questions. Let's see. Someone's asking about specifically grants that are available, not just tax credits. There are a few grants out there. The tax credit really is kind of the best incentive for rehab, especially in Albany. We find that most of the grants actually go through Albany Community Development Agency, who we're hoping will be able to join us hopefully on Tuesday to talk about some of their programs. They have 2 or 3 different ones, but they do have different income qualification levels. So they're much more income based. There are also a few weatherization programs that are out there. I know roof repair and especially window repair is something that people very frequently look for grants for. There's no awesome pot of money I really wish there was out there for window repair or roof repair or insulating. We found that the weatherization funds through both Cornell Cooperative Extension and ACAP, the Albany Community Action Partnership, they've kind of split the city in half, and they have different catchment areas. So they each kind of cover one part of the city, and they have weatherization money that they can give. Some of it has to have an energy audit with it, some of it doesn't, so their programs differ. We're hoping to be able to post some more information about all of those programs later on as the Restoration Fair progresses. But hopefully, especially Albany Community Development Agency will hopefully be able to join us on Tuesday. If they aren't able to, it sounds like it's up in the air at the moment, we'll be posting information on the Facebook page about the different programs that they do offer and some contact information just so that their information is out there, because they do have kind of the majority of the grants available for rehabs in Albany.
I could say that our last two full rehabs, entire building rehabs, both used the ACDA vacant building grant. And now each one of them was awarded $50,000. So ACDA is really an avenue to go down and look for money in rehab.
Someone asks, we talked about Masons earlier. Is there a list of kind of approved contractors? Whether you're in a historic district or not, there really isn't a list of approved contractors, or if you're in a district, there's no list of contractors that you need to use. That's a kind of common misperception there. There is, however, Historic Albany does have a list of kind of preservation-friendly contractors. They're contractors that we see work a lot in Albany historic districts, and they demonstrate through their work that they understand how historic buildings are built, how they age, how they get repaired. And so they're people who are familiar with tax credits, they're familiar with the permits that you need. They're not necessarily recommendations, and the list is available to Historic Albany members. It is a benefit of membership. We are doing a membership drive, our little plug, this month for May, so there's a bit of a discount for joining or renewing in May, and that would give you access to the contractors list. But if you are looking for, someone to repair your windows, we can certainly send you a name if you're not a member, just because we clearly do want stuff to happen. We want rehabs to happen and windows and roofs and whatnot to be done properly. So there is that list, but there's no list of people that you have to choose from, which I think is what the common question is. Okay, let's see. Any other questions from the audience? If not, we'll go back to our list, the emailed questions. Says, can an application for the house, it says in 66 Fonda Road in Colony, still be submitted?
Yes, they can. 66 Fonda in Colony. The virtual tour just went live on that property at the end of last week. So you're just starting to take a look at that one. We do anticipate it will move in July, so stay tuned for that list. And again, applications that are assigned to the July list will be due on the first Tuesday of July, July 7th.
Okay. We have another tax credit question. If someone applies for tax credits, do they have very strict guidelines? Can they change like nothing in the house? Does it have to remain completely historic? And any missing historic fabric, does it have to be replaced if it's already missing? And how do they know what to put back if it's missing?
I would say that you should really only consider what's already there. We're not going to ask you to put back things that are already missing. I think you have to consider what's there. We will look at the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation when you're submitting a project proposal for tax credits. So basically the Secretary standards are available online, and they say that you should keep historic features that exist intact. You should repair rather than replace, but also we've seen many, many applications where something like the roof is obviously way too far gone, and you should be able to replace it, because repairing it really isn't an option at that point. If you have a historic building that's already had its windows replaced and it has like aluminum or vinyl windows and they're not at the end of their life and they're not really working, you can definitely add window replacements as part of your application, but vinyl windows definitely are not acceptable for historic buildings, and they definitely won't be approved through the tax credit program. But for a lot of the land bank properties, I think that you'd also have to pay attention to whether or not it's in a local district in the city of Albany, because that's ultimately where the strictest requirements are going to come in, and having to apply for a certificate of appropriateness through HRC and make sure that they weigh in on what you're doing on the exterior. That's something that you definitely want to pay attention to.
Okay, let's see our next question. Oh, someone wants to know where can they get a list of what is approved for the Historic Resources Commission? Is there kind of a list of approved activities or like a list of windows that, I guess, replacement windows, companies that do the work? Do they have to use those, whether it's like Pella or Gelglen? Do they have to use something like that? Chris, as a commissioner, do you want to take that question?
Well, certainly there's standards that we look for. You got to be a little bit more specific on what particular, every project is unique, so it has different variables, and all those variables are taken into consideration. There is standards. I don't know if I can run down the whole list of them for you.
There's an ordinance, so I'll jump in and help Chris out a little bit. So there is an ordinance for the city of Albany. It is a part of the city building code. It's a zoning overlay district now, so the ordinance is in the zoning section. But it has a list of not necessarily what's approved and not approved, but it's more kind of guidelines. So, and the gist of all of it is basically repair what you have, replace in kind. And if it needs to be replaced or you're replacing something that's missing, replace with something that would be keeping in kind. So I think stoops are kind of a good example of that. If you have a wooden stoop that is original to the building, it has the original ironwork on it, it's in pretty poor shape, you want to come forward and replace it, the commission's going to look at it and say, okay, can the stoop be repaired? Wooden stoops are kind of tricky because you can easily kind of refabricate that to be the same dimensions. You can have the same bullnose on the steps. So wooden stoop repair particularly, you can actually repair, especially if you're reusing the same hardware, that you can get in there, but you're replacing in kind. So it still would be a wood stoop, not a poured cast or precast concrete stoop, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what the ordinance is, and you can find that on the city's website. It's a part of the code. We can post that as well online with where that ordinance is.
Well, not all projects have to go to the Historic Resource Commission.
No,
Only
this
if,
goes in local historic districts. Sorry.
but only if they're considered major certificate of appropriatenesses. And that's usually when you are, well, new infill housing would be one. You're stretching the boundaries and can this be done? And then it's taken into consideration. So not all projects have to go through the HRC. Many of your applications can be signed off right at community development as certificates of minor certificate of appropriatenesses. If you're proposing to do the standards of the historic district, you're clear.
But yes, so a certificate of appropriateness application that would have to go in, and then the level of work being done would either kick it to be basically a desk audit where it gets reviewed internally by staff, or if it's a larger project, then it goes to Chris and the other commissioners to discuss at their bi-monthly meetings.
Correct. Well
All
put.
right. The next question is how does the land bank determine the sale price for a property?
So we determine the price based on our evaluation. We do have a staff that goes into every property we acquire, and we do evaluation based on what condition the property is in, what we think it's going to take to get it back up and running, what we think that the market is going to be when it is back up and running. Those are some of the determinations that we make. But as I said in the beginning, we encourage every applicant to make an offer and indicate to us, why your offer is different than our asking price, if that's the case.
Any other questions from the audience? I can see it's already 6:15, so we've got about 15 minutes left. Any other questions we haven't answered? I see a couple people have been emailing me some of the questions. Let me just check my email, see if there's anything else there. Okay, we'll go back to our email questions. Someone's asking about realtors again. How do they find historic homes to buy in Albany? I think it depends on the, I don't want to say quality of the building per se, but I guess the level of rehab you're looking for. If you're looking for something that's you're ready to move into, you don't even need to change the paint, the land bank may not be the location for that. But you guys do have some buildings that are in really good shape. if you're looking for a rehab, I think the land bank is the place I would start with, honestly. If you're looking for something that is a rehab, most of theirs are on the heavier lift, and especially if you've done something before, those are great. But if you're looking for just kind of a general historic property that may not be a rehab, just a kind of, I won't say run of the mill, but a historic building that doesn't necessarily need rehab. While there are a few realtors that do list a lot of buildings in historic neighborhoods, I would actually recommend looking at the historic district boundaries. You can find them both on our website. You can find them on the city's website, the Historic Resources Commission. We can also post a map as well of what the boundaries are for historic districts. And then I would just look at MLS for those areas, actually. I know like Old Albany Real Estate does list a lot of buildings in, especially Center Square and Hudson Park. Other neighborhoods, especially uptown neighborhoods, have a few other ones. David Pfaff, I don't remember what he's with Berkshire Hathaway. He lists some too. And then that begs another question is, okay, you're looking for a historic building. So there's buildings that are listed on the local and national register. So they're eligible for tax credits, but there are also very clearly older historic homes that aren't yet listed, like the Manning Boulevard neighborhood, a lot of Pine Hills. Those are definitely still historic buildings, but aren't within that map. So I know it's kind of a roundabout answer. I don't know if that answers that.
What century are you looking for? You know, what era?
The Land Bank also has a great program called Neighbors for Neighborhoods. We currently don't have any properties available. 311 and 315 Clinton were available, and there are sales pending on both of those. But those are fully rehabbed properties, and the rehab was covered from grant funds. So the Land Bank is working on one currently. It's 95 Elizabeth. And so we are looking for buyers who are local, that live within 15 miles of that property. And again, we're not looking for the ability to rehab that property because it's already done for you. We're looking for someone who's going to be a successful landlord. So you need to own 2 or fewer properties to qualify for that program. But again, if that sounds something that might fit you, then I encourage you to email us at info@albanycountylandbank.org so that we can tell you more about the program and when that property will be available.
That's a great program. All right, someone's asking, does anyone speak Spanish at the Land Bank?
Yes. Amanda, our Director of Operations. If you call and you just say that Spanish, we will connect you to Amanda. We are in the process of translating our application as well.
That's great. I think that actually exhausts our list from all the questions that have been emailed in. Any other questions from the public? You can also post questions on some of our posts on the Rehab Fair page too. I think pretty much everybody on this panel is a part of the fair, and we'll definitely be able to see it. And if not, we'll just forward questions to the correct experts and see if we can get an answer posted for you. But yeah, if there are any other questions, we're happy to take any other questions at this time. If not, we'll let everyone get back to their dinners a few minutes early. So, okay, yes, another question. It says, your organizations have a posted list of grants and loans for upgrade repairs for the Albany Historic Area buildings. They own a 2-family rental that they want to upgrade the heating and siding. We don't have a specific list of just grants, just because it varies depending on what your property is like. Is it a rental property? Is it a owner-occupied property? Is it roof repair? It falls under different things. So I guess I know some of the staff, we have kind of a mental list of what grants are available. So if you want to just email us with what you're looking for, we can certainly kick back to you. Okay, yep, these kinds of projects are eligible for these different types of programs. I would highly recommend too looking for energy efficiency rebates and tax incentives. The person who asked the question was looking at heating. Heating very often comes with a lot of rebates and tax incentives there, but they're not through anything historic. If your building is in a National Register Historic Districts, tax credits, hands down, it's the best resource. So anyone that comes in asking a question about what are they funding for a property in a historic district, my answer is always initially tax credits, because it is the biggest thing for income producing properties. It's a 40% credit. So it's 20% from the state, 20% from the federal government. The only caveat with the income producing credit is that while the homeowner threshold, it's I believe $5,000, the income producing credit you have to spend, it's more than the adjusted value of the building. So there's an equation where you subtract out the value of the land, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fran, but it would have to be more of a substantial rehab. So if you're doing like kitchens and baths for multiple units, usually that almost easily kicks you into that, over that threshold. But yeah, especially for heating, you may want to look too at some of the energy efficiency programs too, like ACAP and weatherization, because heating falls under that. And then again, depending on where your property is, Arbor Hill Development has some programs and South End Improvement has some programs, but they have kind of neighborhood catchment areas. So very long answer is yes, they're kind of more mental lists that we can give based on your property's needs. Okay, someone's asking, can we repeat the panelists' names and who everyone is? Yes, do you guys all want to introduce yourselves again, or do you want me to introduce you again? Nothing?
Kara, go ahead and introduce us.
Yeah, you did a great job before.
So we have Erica Gans with the Albany County Land Bank. We have Chris Hacker of Albany Artisans, which is a construction company that does restoration. And then we have Fran Stern from the New York State Historic Preservation Office. And Fran handles the tax credit applications. And again, we'll also have contact info for everybody at the end. I'll put that up in a few minutes, and then I'll just leave that slide open as people are, actually, I can move that up now. That way you guys can see everybody. There we go. Okay. And that's everybody here. That's our contact info and who we are with. So that also answers that question. Let me see. Any other questions? I think so. Nope. Someone just commented that the Land Bank's website is very informative, and they very much appreciate that. So well done, Erica.
Everyone on our team works very hard to keep it up to date. So we are just trying to continue to keep it packed with more and more information.
All right, that is all the questions we have. Any lingering questions? Okay. We have Adam Zaranko who's joined us. Adam is the executive director at the Land Bank. Adam, do you want to say anything briefly before we head out?
No, nothing that Erica hadn't said in a more articulate manner, I'm sure. So sorry I'm late to the panel, but yeah, no, we have plenty of properties. We have a team that's willing to work with everyone that wants to talk to us and find properties that fit what they need. Sign up for our website, our email list on our website to stay apprised of what's going through each cycle. And we're looking for partners that can take these properties and help us return them to productive use.
So
Historic or non-historic, both.
Everything.
Yeah. Thank you guys for your partnership.
Oh, thank you guys for participating. And so this is kind of the first webinar that we're having as a part of our restoration fair. The next one, which is focusing on funding, which a lot of the questions were about, is going to be this coming Tuesday at 5:30. The link to register for it, it's same just like this. So it's on Facebook. So just register there. You can even register while it's in progress and join late. It's not an issue at all. So hopefully we'll see everybody back again on Tuesday. And then we're going to try and keep doing these in the last week of the month. So we're going to be looking at another property in June. So Wednesday we'll have another post about, I believe it's 569. I keep screwing up the street address on Clinton.
569 Clinton Avenue.
So we'll be posting photographs, and Erica did a lovely walkthrough. So you'll see that video footage coming up this week. And then we'll end our whole month of programs and talks again. Fran will be talking about more tax credits for that building and the different parts of the application. And then TAP, an architecture firm from Troy, is going to be joining us to talk a little bit more about how you would handle a rehab of a building like that. And 569 Clinton is a great example because that one's actually already been started a little bit. Some of the framing's already there, and so they can discuss some of the challenges of if you've got a building that's already been started, what are the code issues, what can stay, what might have to go. So we'll be talking about all of that in June. So if you're not already on either the Land Bank's mailing list or Historic Albany's mailing list, Historic Albany sends out weekly newsletters with all of our upcoming programming. So this is a part of a lot of the diverse programming that Historic Albany does. We also do some DIY workshops. We have demonstrations that for people coming in to do window repair, a whole gamut of both technical and just interesting historical programming. So if you're interested in more programming with Historic Albany, please feel free to join our list. You can do so on our website, which is historic-albany.org. And I think that's all we have for tonight. So thank you all for joining us. This was a great audience. I was so excited to see that many people. This is really wonderful. So thank you for making the first night a good one.
Thank you very much.
Yep, very cool.
All right, and I'll leave this list up of the speakers for just a few minutes so that if anyone needs to write down contact info, they can do so. So thank you.